welcome to today's Dream Firm Leader interview. My name is Tyler S. Clark, and what I would like to do is I would love to introduce to you the Dream Firm Leader who's dropping the hammer on cash flow problems for contractors through hands-off accounting services so her clients can build things that matter. The Bodhisattva of Bodhi Business Advisors, the CPA who don't play games with your numbers. It's an honor and a privilege to introduce to you the wise, the witty, the wonderful, the one and only Lisa Raish. Lisa, welcome. How are you doing today?
Well, I am blown away by that intro. Thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure. It's an honor to have you with us. And so what I'd like to do to just kick things off is I always like to start from that high level overview of just your career so far in accounting, how you got started in it, and what really led us to where we are today.
So I took a very roundabout way to get here. I actually started out right out of college, right out of high school. I was actually an architecture major. Did that for 2 years, came home, ran out of money, kind of the typical story. Started working in fast food and realized probably a couple years into that I absolutely had to get out of that because that was just going to become my life. But I didn't know, I knew I needed to go back to school. I had no idea what I was going to do. I actually had a friend's mom who said, well, why don't you just go into accounting? And I was like, oh, okay. She's like, you'll always work. Okay. I had no clue what I was going to do with myself. There was nothing magical, mystical. My father was actually an accountant when I was a kid. He did that probably for until I was about 10 or so. And I do remember telling my father, I'm like, I'm going to go to school for accounting. And he was like, why the hell are you going to do that? I thought, oh, thanks, Dad. Huh. But I said, no, it's a lot different than when you were, in accounting. And he's like, oh, all right, whatever you want to do. And went back to school. My last year of undergrad, I worked in a local public accounting firm. So I worked in the typical legacy firm. We were half tax shop, half audit shop. And so 10 or so months out of the year, we were a tax shop. I did enough audit to get my license, didn't like it. We did municipal audits and they were terrible. So I did that for, enough time. But I was in public accounting when the market melted down in 2008. And started to kind of see a different side of business because things had really been going well in the early part of the 2000s. And now you're seeing businesses that are just imploding and life was just imploding financially. And we weren't actually helping anyone. All we were doing was tax returns. And I didn't really think that's what I wanted to do. I felt like we needed to be helping our business clients, but we weren't. I worked for an older gentleman who had been in practice for 25, 30 years. The practice was set a specific way. And so I made the decision. I just completely left public accounting, spent about 8 years working in corporate America, working in the finance department of a $20 million software company. We were acquired by a $6 billion publicly traded US company. So I went from working directly for the CFO to one of 125 accountants in the finance department in the US alone. It was just a monstrosity. Moving the Titanic with an oar just doesn't happen. You get a chance to kind of see a very different side of business when you work in such a monstrosity like that. Left there, went on to another market intelligence company, a little bit smaller. But as kind of the years went on, and I really honestly felt like I was on the CFO track, that's what I really wanted to do. But I just didn't feel it anymore. And probably sometime in mid 2016, I made a decision that I was going to kind of make that shift. And mid 17, I just completely left corporate America. I joke that I, became a corporate refugee, and started my practice. But I was clear on what I wanted to do and the fact that I wanted to help businesses and I wanted to work with businesses. But honestly, I didn't know anything beyond that. I was your atypical practitioner. I knew how to bang out a trial balance. I knew how to bang out a tax return. But beyond that, in terms of running my business, every single horrible mistake that you could potentially make, I absolutely made. And so Started off making all the crazy mistakes. A lot of the decisions I made going on after that were predicated on the terrible mistakes I made at the beginning, and it just becomes kind of a vicious circle. And then COVID hit, and I got smacked in the head, and suddenly, wondering not only are my clients going to go out of business, but could I go out of business too if my clients go out of business? So 2020 was definitely a big smack in the head for me, for sure. I've been whacked up the head a couple times, but 2020 was really a big eye opener for me, for sure. I knew I had to do something different because I was just circling around.
So many amazing things to pull from that answer. The reflection very early on in your accounting career that we can and should be doing more for our clients, but you weren't necessarily the decision maker at that time. So this is the way it's always been done. This is what we're going to continue to do. It works, it pays the bills, yada, yada, yada. And that's what the clients, quote unquote, need. Maybe not necessarily what they want or deserve, but it's what they need. And then fast forward, we go through this career arc of corporate America. We have some realizations of kind of what that life is all about and what its shortcomings are. And then we find ourselves in 2016, 2017, make the transition into entrepreneurship. And I just want to be clear, entrepreneurship full-time happened in 2017, correct, Lisa?
Yeah, June of 2017. And, my parents had both been in entrepreneurs, and I thought it was the dirtiest word on the planet. Honestly, I never in a million years would have thought that I would be doing this for myself. Honestly, it was just dirty word. Like, don't even bother me with that silliness. So to kind of come full circle is actually quite comical. And then once I actually had success, my father changed his mind about my career choice.
Imagine that. And you brought up something shortly thereafter, which was we took, I'll say, a relatively hard path through entrepreneurship where we had to go through a lot of trial and error. We had to guess, test, somewhat sort of revise, maybe kind of struggle through that pain again. And there's an expression that I love, which is life will keep teaching you the same lessons until you learn from them. And unfortunately, we can't necessarily have, life can only teach you so much about the Rona and the pandemic from last year before you have to have a realization that things are different. Question is what are we going to do about that? So what I'd like to transition to here, Lisa, is a better understanding of the services you provide, because we have that great juxtaposition of like, that's what used to be done. We've had that reflection, but how are we still incorporating those services and building on them to ultimately deliver a better value to our clients? What does that look like to you right now?
So for, most clients, it's some level of bookkeeping, tax, and then on top of that is varying levels of advisory work. So for clients who are looking to grow, doing budgeting and forecasting with them, having quarterly touch bases with them to review where they've gotten, what are they working on, what's working, what's not working. I was very, very clear in knowing that that's what I wanted to do, the advisory piece. When I started my practice, the problem that I ran into is that which I didn't learn until I started working with you, is that I just didn't have that clear, value ladder with the clients. I turned away bookkeeping clients over the years because I didn't want to do bookkeeping, but really realizing now that I've got to do bookkeeping and do tax because that's part of what they need. And then the advisory kind of comes naturally on top of it, because when you start working with them, they're looking to you more regularly for that kind of support. So I made a decision probably about 2 years ago to sell off my individual tax book of business. And that was something that I put a lot of effort into really thinking through, because I was spending a lot of time at this period of the year working on individual tax returns, and I knew I wanted to work with businesses. And so in order to truly work with businesses, and I do their business returns, I do their personal returns, I really needed to just shy away from doing, being a tax shop at this part of the year. So for me, it's it's really like I'm truly B2B. And so I'm working business to business. So my client base are businesses, S Corps, LLCs, things like that. And then also the individual themselves as well. And then really working as the partner in their business because they're looking for guidance in other things too. They're looking to get to a specific place with their business, but they also have personal goals that they really are looking to achieve too. So knowing when to bring in other professionals to support them in other areas so that they can achieve their personal goals or whatever goals they have for their family or for their children.
So many amazing things to pull from that answer. First of which being, we cannot do high-level advisory service without sound accounting and bookkeeping being done. And I like to, the way I phrase this to Lisa, and the way we always talk about this with our Dream Firm leaders, our top clients here, is we say, if your end result, this really high level of advisory service, the tangible impact on their personal life, their professional life, because of the guidance and what we're able to put in place on their behalf, if that is dependent on something else, bookkeeping, right? Accurate numbers to have these conversations. Should we have control over that or should we not? Because if the books are wrong and therefore your advisory is wrong, whose fault is that? Well, if we take control of it, we have more control, which I think is really an important thing. You want to embrace that responsibility because your clients are ultimately looking for someone who's going to want that responsibility and want to deliver more for them. So that's absolutely fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. And I have one other thing to just dig into from that, which is the decision to let go of your personal tax business. And I know a lot of people on this call right now are probably just eking out a few minutes to just hear a little bit about your story because they know they have to get back to the personal grind of those tax returns. And so how did you come to make that decision? What were some of the factors that went into it? Did you do any sort of analysis of time required versus income brought in, or what was it that really kind of push that to the forefront for something you said, I got to package this up and I got to move on from it?
I didn't do any proper analysis. I will say that I found myself more times than not during this February to April period, pushing a business client to the side or pushing their work to the side to do that $250, $300 tax return where now the type of clients that I'm working with and, doing bookkeeping, tax, and advisory, it's a monthly relationship. I have monthly recurring revenue coming in. I've got at the minimum, usually about $1,000 a month in monthly recurring revenue coming from an individual client. And I'm pushing that $12,000 a year to the side for that $300 tax return, who the person sent, all their information over the wall in little nuggets. And so I picked it up 17 times and, then they come back and they are mad at me because they didn't get their $9,000 refunds because they changed jobs and they never looked at their withholding and they had no idea they were getting more money every 2 weeks. And it was just that I was dealing with more and more. And I thought, this is not the work I want to do. And I can't give my business clients that experience that they're paying for, honestly, if I'm kicking their business to the side to work on, another individual tax return, someone I only see at this time of the year. So yeah, I will tell you, it was definitely a revenue hit that year, that first year, but I knew that in order to really free up my day to take on more business clients, which were far more profitable for me, that I absolutely had to do it. And it was, believe me, it was a kick that first year. It was definitely a difference in revenue, but it just freed up my time to work more strategically on the clients that I wanted to work on.
And such an important answer, because it wasn't necessarily we had to do an analysis as much as we had to have a reflection on what is the trade that I am making right now, and is this the type of trade that I want to be making? I'm neglecting higher value clients that need more of my time, my most precious resource, to go and give it to people who ultimately don't respect it and aren't paying for it at the same level. And so, yes, we had to recognize this is a bad trade, but I want to compliment Lisa. She did something about it. A lot of people have this reflection and they go, well, I can't take the revenue hit. And then they stay stuck, or they stay working 80 to 120-hour weeks during tax season. And then they wonder why they're so burnt out and they can't focus on growing their business the way that they want. It's like, we have to understand that there's a poor trade that we're making. The question is what are we going to do about it? And Lisa made a powerful decision. There's a principle of growth that I love. And I always forget the name of this book. I think it's called Necessary Growth or Necessary Pruning. Someone always mentions it in the comments section whenever I bring it up, but I always forget the name of it. But essentially, the rose bush cannot grow unless you trim and prune it back. And this is exceptionally true for all of your accounting firms. If you're not at least looking at your bottom 5 clients every single year and saying thanks, but no thanks, you're trading your most precious resource for people who don't respect that resource, that being, of course, your time. So fantastic answer, Lisa. I want to progress a little bit forward to your relationship with Dream Firms. We talked a lot about what your life was like before that, but I want to talk about some of the problems you were experiencing before you started working with us. So just paint that picture of what life was like before you started working directly with us.
Definitely did not have any consistent marketing. I will say that had been the bane of my existence, the albatross around my neck from day one. Definitely no consistent marketing, no consistent clients coming in. So it was kind of a whenever, so really no solid or consistent growth. Knew I needed to put a lot of process in and procedures, but almost didn't know where to start. Like, which one do you start with? What do I do? How do I do it? And so there was just a lot of just inconsistency across the board, and a lot of, probably I would call it recreation of the wheel, and pretty much like religiously every day kind of a thing. And so, I needed to get my marketing together, and so that I could consistently, get discovery calls and bring in new clients. And so the program really taught me that, it was wonderful that you have, a lot of the processes and the programs, and these are like the things that you recommend. And because that's the biggest thing, I think a lot of times, where you're thinking about, well, I got to systematize something, but what the heck do I use, or how do I use it? And so that kind of barrier to entry for me was really helpful, because those are things that really take your time, right? When you're trying to teach yourself how to use a new program or create a new process. And so for you to have tested a lot of these things out and said, all right, this is what we've done, this is what's consistently worked with our clients, try this. And it's like, oh, okay, I have something to try, something to work through. If it doesn't work, then I can, adjust it as is. But really not having process and procedure in place, like no marketing in place, like nothing. I was just basically kind of like waiting for somebody to knock on the door, for lack of a better word. And there was just no consistency with that. So for me, when COVID hit and, clients are panicking and we don't know if they're going to be in business, it's like, oh, well, if they're not in business, then I'm not in business, because I don't have revenues coming in because they're not working. And so it really just shed light on how inconsistent I had been for well over 3 years, just kind of floating around, like, kind of spinning around in circles, honestly. And that's really what I had been doing for 3 years. So, the program definitely helped me to create process and procedure where I needed to. And it really shown me where I needed to kind of work on things and where I need to start to work on things. And so I implemented the LGS, in early, I want to say mid-January. So I've got her, she's working the LinkedIn strategy. I was all like crazy gung-ho initially. And I was like, all right, what am I doing next? And you're like, well, is the LinkedIn thing not working? I was like, well, no, she's doing great. He's like, well, you're like, why don't you just work it? I'm like, oh, like, is this how we do it? And you're like, yeah, like just work the LinkedIn strategy. And I was like, okay. And it's working. I'm getting discovery calls. I'm getting virtual coffees. I'm getting enough calls where I'm, potentially bringing in one new client a month, which when you're a solo owner, one new client a month, and you have a monthly relationship and you're doing bookkeeping and things like that, there's an onboarding process. So for me, I'm getting the results that I need for the size of my practice right now. One new client a month. If I get one new client a month, by the end of this year, I would have literally doubled my monthly recurring revenues year over year. And so I'm getting the results I need right now, with with the tools that you've given us. I'm working the LGS. In February, I brought on a part-time bookkeeper to start to take some of the everyday stuff off of my table. The next thing for me will be to bring on an accountant to help me with a level of the advisory stuff. I'll still be doing the conversations with clients, but I need kind of like that next level person. And so as I add clients, I'm slowly adding the team to support me. And I think some of the results that some of the owners have had have been phenomenal in the program, and it's just amazing. But it took me a little while to realize I honestly couldn't take results like that right now. I couldn't handle 4 new clients a month. I would be completely overwhelmed, and onboarding clients would be wonky, and it wouldn't be a sticky experience, so that they're pleased with the experience and they're okay with making that investment on a monthly basis. And so it took me a while to really get over that. Like, I was like, why aren't I getting, 4 new clients a month? I should be getting $100,000 in new revenue, in the first 5 months. And I just realized that you can't handle that right now. You need to start to bring on the support system so that you, in fact, can handle that. And so maybe in the latter part of the year, maybe I might feel like I could start to onboard more clients a month. But right now, honestly, I've onboarded 3 new clients in the first 3 months of the year, which I don't think I onboarded 3 new clients in 2019 in total. And so I'm constantly having discovery calls. And so really that's what the program did for me. The program got me to focus on the things I needed to focus on. Marketing was a huge problem for me. Huge. Complete lack of inconsistency. I mean, just awful. I now have my LGS. She's working the LinkedIn strategy. I'm getting my calls. And that works for me right now at the size that I'm at. And I'm incredibly pleased with that, to say that, by the first week of March, I had onboarded 3 new clients. And like, that's monstrous for a solo owner who is literally been the chief cook and bottle washer since day one. And then I'll have a couple of people helping me. So, I mean, that's what the program did for me. It really got me focused on really working on my business and not working in it, and showing me I needed to work on my business and where to work on it. Because that was, I think, a lot of the confusion too, is like, well, I have to do marketing. Okay, well, what the heck is that? Like, I know enough to be dangerous. You know what I mean? What the heck is marketing? And understanding, you're like, well, we've used the LGS strategy and this is what they do. And you gave us all the tools. And I was all panicky as I brought her on. I'm like, what is she supposed to do? And you're like, just give her the Trello card. I was like, okay. And she ran off and started doing what she was supposed to do. And it works, and it's working for me right now. So I think just providing us with the tools to give us the direction to go in is incredibly helpful, because I've worked with other coaches before, and I needed that direction. I did not know that I needed to go down this road at this speed in order to achieve these results, because I didn't even know I was supposed to be on that road before. And so that's really what the program provides, is that direction. Get the LGS, get them working the strategy. I'm like, okay, it's working. And it's working for me right now. So I'm incredibly, incredibly happy, and I have direction, and I have my work on my business. My day is not Wednesday. My day is Friday. I've got my outgoing message. Clients I thought would be devastated. I have clients who completely love it. They've like emailed me back, oh my God, I love this. Or they'll email me on Friday, I know you're working on your business, so I don't expect to hear from you until Monday. And I was so worried that clients would be so upset with me. And no, it was just all in my brain. It was just me thinking all of those things, which aren't real. Clients I set boundaries with them. That was a huge issue. I hadn't set boundaries. Now I set boundaries with them. And I have the relationship with clients because I create the rules of engagement, and it's a much smoother process now. It's not just kind of recreate the wheel every day.
Wow, what a response. I have to catch my breath. I'm overwhelmed. Thank you for sharing what you did, Lisa. I think it really provides a lot of insight into where you were and very common problems that a lot of firm owners are going through, which essentially is we don't know where to turn or what to focus on right now. And what I find to be very interesting is similar to Lisa. A lot of people come to us and they go, I want explosive growth, Tyler. And I say, fantastic. We have no problem achieving that. But then we dig in a little deeper and we go, how much time is really available to handle sales calls, to onboard a new team member, to onboard new clients? Because the main theme that Lisa was emphasizing there is consistency. I'm not interested in creating the turnstile of clients coming in one door and going out another door. That is not in anyone's best interest, especially yours. And so to be able to have that reflection and say, this is the pace that I am comfortable with and happy with because I can see the return and I'm getting consistency in the form of meaningful results. When we say meaningful results, we're talking discovery calls with the type of clients that you're looking to work with. And I want to transition a little bit into that in just a second, but I know that I had a couple of people saying, what's an LGS? What's an LGS? What's an LGS? So an LGS is the abbreviation for what we refer to as a lead generation specialist. This is someone inside of your firm who is directly responsible for getting consistency in the marketing department of your business, which is getting appointments on your calendar. I know a lot of people hear that, they go, hiring someone, right? Training someone. But if you listen to Lisa's response, she was like, oh, this was so much easier than I thought it would have been because it's already built, right? You do not need to reinvent the wheel for how lead generation works. You simply have to implement the systems that give you consistency to generate leads. That's what we do at Dream Firms, and far more than that as well, which is how do you onboard properly? How do you hire team members efficiently? What you're focused on over the next 90 days. So I just want to say thank you so much for what you shared there, Lisa, but I also want to take a minute and dive a little deeper into niche and niche selection, because I know there's a lot of people on here who would love to niche, they're afraid to, or they're afraid their legacy clients will leave them. Again, you mentioned kind of having thoughts in your head, and as soon as we put it into the market, they're not really necessarily validated specifically for how we work on our business on a certain day of the week, and we block everything out. But similarly, a lot of people have these thoughts or desires to niche, but then they also have these fears that hold them back. What led you to choosing the niche that you have? And how did Dream Firms help you to get more targeted and express your value so that people would want to book calls with you?
So the firm that I worked in years ago, we actually worked with a lot of developers, contractors, tradesmen. So I had a good set of skills kind of dating back to that. And then over the last couple of years, it was just a handful of clients that I had. It was kind of consistent. And so that was one of the hardest things for me to kind of dig into, honestly, in the program, was what do I want to niche down to? And it kind of just presented itself in that I had a handful of clients in the space and I had the experience, and I thought, okay, Tyler's they're kind of just sitting there staring at you. I'm like, okay. And, building, it's funny, the tagline, that was the hardest part because we kind of worked through that. And I came to the meeting with my tagline and he's like, no, that doesn't sound right. I'm like, I know it doesn't sound right. And so the tagline was really, really important. And once I finally had it, it just made sense. And, I made the slight changes to my LinkedIn. I made the slight changes to my Facebook with my tagline. And now when I have calls, I can talk in the space, right? I have the experience. And so for contractors, developers, tradesmen who are hammer swingers, right? And they're electricians and plumbers. That's what they're amazing at, and that's what they're good at. And so for them, a lot of times the accounting is the blind spot. So being able to speak their language is really important, and actually helping them to rein in something that for many of them is just is a huge challenge. I mean, cash flow in the trades is probably problem number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Most of them honestly feel like they just need to throw more jobs at it and it'll fix everything, and it doesn't. And so it really just gave me the ability to speak more clearly. And I'm not trying to be all to everyone, and then having to learn like every industry and knowing like a little bit about every industry. I start to work on like building out kind of like my sphere of what are they going to need, what do they need from a skill set from me, but then also from other professionals to support them, so that I can in fact introduce others to help them in other areas. So being able to really truly partner with them, speak their language, and help them with the thing that they hate. They don't want to deal with it, like bookkeeping, tax, like they don't care. Like, is there money on Friday to pay my guys? Like, that's what they're worried about. And so being able to kind of speak that language with them when I get on those virtual coffees and then I get on those discovery calls really made it a lot easier. I've had other people come to me in the interim that are not in like that space. I still have a conversation. I mean, I still have a skill set, a very round skill set. So if it makes sense from like a client perspective, I'll have a conversation. I might onboard them. But honestly, my big focus is, contractors, developers, and tradesmen right now.
I can't help but find it ironic that you had studied architecture as well. Like you knew back then as well. Like you knew all those years ago that it was like maybe that this there's something here. And so again, I want to just emphasize this because Lisa was essentially like, she did the analysis that we walk through all of our clients with. And what is clear to other people is sometimes not very clear to the person who's in the moment, right? Whether it's you trying to figure out what your niche is, and I'm just going, wait a minute, you studied architecture. The majority of your clients are contractors and tradesmen. Like, am I missing something here? Like, what is preventing this? And it's like, actually, no, you're not missing anything. And it's like, okay, like, let's not overthink this. Let's move forward with it and see how it goes. And just for everyone listening, I teased in the email, and I led on the opener when I brought you in. But Lisa, you mentioned your tagline a couple of times, something we helped work together on. Would you mind just saying it one time for us?
Let's see if I don't always remember it perfectly, but it's dropping the hammer on cash flow problems for contractors. So let's with hands-off accounting services so they can build the things that matter.
Perfect. We got there eventually. But my point is if you're a contractor and you read that, because again, we're not asking us to do like, I'm not saying go join TikTok, guys. I'm not saying, go do all these crazy things. I'm saying we need to make just tiny, tiny shifts so that when people see you, the first impression is this is what I'm looking for, or at the very least, I'll hear you out, right? Like you've got dedicated expertise. You know what my number one problem is: cash flow, cash flow, cash flow, cash flow, and cash flow. And you're specific to what my industry is. I mean, who's not going to raise their hand and at least say, I'll hear you out? And that's what happens. And by extension, since we have more people raising their hand, booking calls to be more specific without requiring Lisa's direct time, LGS, all of a sudden she's showing up and she's essentially just demonstrating her expertise, her true value. And so it's no surprise that people are saying, okay, right? Like credit card, I'm ready. Like I've been waiting for this. Thank you. This is a problem. I don't want to think about it anymore. You're the solution I've been looking for. So fantastic, fantastic, fantastic all around. You had mentioned working and investing in other companies to grow your firm. Could you just maybe share what you feel is the primary difference between those versus what's led to the breakthroughs you've had with dream firms?
Clear. The program is clear. These are the steps. These are the steps we recommend. These are the steps we recommend because they've worked for our clients. I worked with another coach, and it was expensive and kludgy, and I didn't get any results because I needed someone to tell me, like, go down this street and stop here and do this. And that was what I was missing in all of the other programs, was the clear direction. Like, we've done this, our clients have consistently done this, and this works. This is how you do it. This is the program we recommend. This is how you use the program. You want to go here and click on this. And so as I was watching the videos, I'm clicking and I'm doing, and I'm like, okay, like, I didn't have to figure all of that out, which I think a lot of times is really the biggest barrier to entry. Is I don't know which one to use. I don't know how to use it. How do I implement it? How deeply? Who should be doing it? And it's all of that unknown. And you just basically laid it all out on the table and said, this is what we do. This is what our clients do. It's worked for our clients. Try it. And I did, and it worked. And that's what I needed. I really needed someone. I'm not a marketing person, so I didn't know where to start with. Should I be on Facebook? I don't know. Like, what should I be putting on Facebook? Like, who knows? I don't even know what I was supposed to be doing. And so it's almost that analysis paralysis, right? I know I should be doing something, but what is it? Well, should I do this? Well, I don't know. What do I do? And so, like, you never do anything because you're trying to constantly figure out what you should be doing and how to do it and why you're doing it. And so I will say absolutely 150,000%, it was the fact that the program is laid out. Now, you've got to be willing to put the time in. And if you're not, then honestly, don't bother. I was finally willing to put the time into the program and implement what you were teaching us, but I was ready. Prior to your program, I wasn't ready. And I didn't realize that until the first conversation you and I had. I wasn't ready. I finally became ready. And that's when I called you back and I said, okay, I'm ready now. And you're like, okay, didn't expect to hear from you. But I wasn't ready. Right? But I wasn't ready. And so I had a lot of other things going on, a lot of like bad decisions, bad financial decisions, and it just clouded everything I was doing. But again, COVID smacked me in the head and said, you've got to make a change. And if you don't make a change, you're just going to continue to cycle in circles. And so I was finally ready to make that change. And you presented me with the option that, here's the program. This is what you need to do. And I was like, oh, okay. Not only is he telling me that I should do these steps, but now I'm ready to do these steps. And because I'm actually going to do the program. I'm going to finish going through the program. I'm going to implement things. And for me, that was just a really big, I had to be ready, and I was finally ready to make a change in my practice. Other than that, no, I'd probably still spinning around like a tornado.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And I will say I was surprised to hear from you, but part of the reason sometimes that catches me a little bit off guard is because I don't know what's going on in people's personal lives. I don't know necessarily why people don't make the decisions that they make, but the key for what I say to my clients and what I believe is we should never take those things personally, and we're just going to approach them as professionally as possible. And the other thing that you'll notice, that if you ever speak to myself or one of our Dream Firms advisors, Matt, you'll realize that we don't do high pressure sales. Like it is your decision for whether or not you join us. I've heard a lot of like weird stories about like other programs that are, it's $15,000, but if you sign up tomorrow, it's 10. And then if you what are we doing here? Like, that doesn't make sense to me. The price is what it is. And are they going to teach you to do that? Because that doesn't seem like a very solid pricing strategy. That is essentially saying, well, if you're completely unready right now, I'm going to charge you an extra $5,000 in a couple of months. And it's like, no, you're not. So why are we even trying to do this in the first place? And if you do, I'm not going to invest with you. So my point from this here is like, don't feel like you have to invest in something because someone's using those particular sales tactics. Take your time. When you're ready, you're ready. And when you're ready, that's when you get to maximize it. And if you talk to Lisa, any of our clients, all I care about, maximize it, right? Like the reason the program's laid out the way it is like maximize it. Some people are great talking about theory of why social media is important, right? Well, X, Y, and Z. Some people are great even telling you like what you need to be doing on social media, right? Here's what you should be posting, right? Well, how do you do it? It's one thing to know why. It's one thing to know what. It's another thing to know how to do it. And if you can't account for these three layers, it's incomplete. It's an incomplete process and program. So thank you for sharing that, Lisa. I really appreciate that. And I want to just speed up here because we've got about 15 minutes left here. And I know we've got a couple of questions piling in. If you got questions for Lisa, if you got questions for me, feel free to start dropping them down in the chat in the comment section here on Zoom. So just a little bit of rapid fire here. What do you enjoy most about working with us?
It's real. It's easy, right? And I know that sounds silly. Like I enjoy coming to the call every week, right? It's something I look forward to. Like I'm excited to bring my wins. I actually now think about what my wins are because I never did that before, like never. And now I'm like, oh, like this is a big win for me. And so it's easy in that sense for me to not be like, oh, I got to get on this call. Like I look forward to the call. I look forward to the conversation with the group. I look forward to learning more. And so from that perspective, it's easy. You know, that's the easy part of it. It's not like another tedious thing to do. And again, it's still like, even when you kind of work through like the initial layer of the materials, they'll be deeper. And so knowing that I can come here and get a question answered is huge. Like I'm not digging around on the internet on, the rabbit hole of YouTube hell, trying to figure out something. I can come to the group or I can come to Tyler and say, hey, what about this? And so that's a really big thing too, to have extra people to kind of bounce things off of, especially as a solo owner. I don't have a team. I don't have a partner. And so there isn't that extra layer like, should I do this? Should I do that? What about this? Like, how do I do that? And so the program gives you that. It gives you that one more layer of someone to talk to, especially for us solo owners, for sure. Definitely.
Love it. And I'll just summarize that as support, right? When you're an entrepreneur, if you're not surrounded by other like-minded entrepreneurs, it's tough. Sometimes it's hard to separate a win from a loss. And some people will come on, it's like, well, I did this one thing over the last week. And I'm like, that's incredible. Like, I'm like, that's such an important thing. Like, how are we not like jumping up and down? And then we have this reflection. We're like, wow, that actually was a really powerful thing that I accomplished last week. And we're all like celebrating. And similarly, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. There are problems, there are questions, and I'm not the end all be all of information. I never will be. And so now what we get to do is crowdsource this among the best and brightest of your peers, which again, I think is just super awesome. And I find it interesting. Every single person answers that question exactly the same way. So, so I want to give some perspective here in terms of growth. If you are willing to share, Lisa, how much have you added to your firm and in what time frame?
So in the first 3 months, I added about 34,000 in annual recurring revenue to my practice. That's over those like on average 3 clients. So I'm probably closing roughly $1,000 per month for every new client I bring on. So somewhere in that $12,000 annual range for clients.
That is
so that's huge. And honestly, if I bring on 1 new client a month, like I have kind of mapped out for myself, I literally would have doubled my practice year over year in December in terms of monthly recurring revenue.
So you are on track to win your Dream Firm Award then, is that correct?
I am. So I was looking through your questions in advance. And so I'm about 1/3 of the way. So for me, I want to do 100,000 in monthly recurring revenue. So I'm about 1/3 of the way there, but I did just close a project with a new client and it's only 3 months. So if I included that in my number, I'm about halfway there, but I don't want to include it until it converts and truly becomes a monthly recurring, like hopefully this project will go beyond the 3 months. So technically I'm halfway there, but for my own personal, I'm only a third of the way there.
Okay. Well, that's absolutely fantastic. Sounds like a 10x return in 90 days. I just want to make sure I heard that correct.
Basically, yes.
Just double checking. Okay. Wow. That's absolutely incredible. And, 2 last questions, and then we're getting to Q&A. I can see a bunch of people filing in a couple of things. So we're going to go rapid fire on these. What has surprised you the most when it came to growing your practice?
That when you had a direction, it's not as painful as you think it's going to be. And I am getting more comfortable with the coffees and the discovery calls. It's always been a really big thing for me, a hard thing. So I'm enjoying the discovery calls more. So I would say that too. I think that's a big thing.
Everything is more uncomfortable the first time we do it, and then we gradually get more comfortable with it. So that is absolutely true. And last question before we go to open Q&A, who would you recommend the Create Your Dream Firm program to?
I would say someone who truly needs someone to provide them with some direction. Like they know they want to do something, but it's really hard when you're doing it yourself to say, okay, this is the first thing that I'm supposed to do, because you don't know what that first thing is. And so honestly, I found it super helpful when you said, this is probably the first thing you should do. And you're like, oh, okay, thank you. And this is the second thing. I'm like, oh, okay. And then it becomes digestible. And now you're like, oh, and you're adding a new process and you're adding this new thing. And again, it's someone saying, we've tried this. This has worked. Why don't you give this a try? Now, if it doesn't work for you, at least you've got a direction to go in now, instead of just, again, spinning around on the internet, Googling this and trying that and buying this and buying that, and you don't really know what it's supposed to do for you.
Perfect. Completely agreed. And as I always say, little wins stack on top of each other. Let's just get something quick, easy win. And then boom, we understand how it works. Get it operational, on to the next one. It's not about overwhelming. Let's stay focused on this one thing, get it done well, get it done the right way, on to the next one. Fantastic. And I'm going to dive into Q&A here. Dan says, define bottom 5 clients in terms of dollars or in terms of quality or in terms of pain. All of the above. Normally these things are interrelated, which is like, if you are thinking they're a problem client, the answer is yes. That's my normal way of going. What's an LGS? Lead generation specialist. Great stuff, Lisa, from Fred. Unfortunately, I have to run. No problem, Fred. This is going to be recorded. I've got something from Dan. That is one of the hardest things for tax pros to understand, is that they have to control their practice and their clients can fall in line with what the tax pro wants and not the other way around. Absolutely. John says, how do you know when you are ready? I'll answer this one very quickly, which is, it's different for everyone, John, but my answer is, be willing to have the conversation. I think that's the thing that holds most people back from being ready, is if you are willing to have the conversation, it expands your understanding of what ready really means. So if you haven't already had a chance to speak through and understand how we work with each other, please feel free to book a call. Maureen will drop the link down below. Deborah sent me a direct message. Tyler, what's the next step? Book a call. You'll be able to learn what that looks like. And then John also says, what if we can't afford your program, John? And I'll inverse this very quickly. What if you can't afford to not do our program? What I mean by that is, what if you continue on the path that you're on right now? Just imagine where that goes. Can you continue doing what you're doing? Or if you're made a similar realization to Lisa, that something has to change. Do you want to make that change as efficiently as possible? If the answer is yes, just look a little further out than the investment. And I assure you, right? Like I literally guarantee in writing that we'll 10x it, but just look a little further out. You look a little further out, you're going to look at this as, you're going to look back on this as, wow, I'm really happy I decided to make that change. And I'm really glad I found a way to make it happen. We do also have a payment plan as necessary. Joshua says, is your target client CPAs or anyone in the accounting bookkeeping space? Accounting, bookkeeping, tax. I like to use accounting as the broad term because bookkeeping and tax are, to me, a branch of accounting. So we work with anyone in the accounting, bookkeeping, and tax space, but just like Lisa is specialized with contractors, we are specialized as well. It makes your value proposition higher and it makes the results you're capable of delivering significantly better. David, what are the program details? David, book the call, be able to learn all about it, and that will give you all the details you need. But essentially, it's an 8-week one-on-one unlimited coaching experience with me during those 8 weeks, 8 weeks of group coaching as well, capped at 25 firms. And you get lifetime access to the material as well as all future updates. And that's what Lisa was referring to with the step-by-step guidance. This is a reference to what that is. You'll learn more about that if you choose to book a call. And then I have, looks like I've got a few coming in from Facebook as well. Thank you for sharing these with me. And then I've got one from Jerry. Wow, that single sentence screams your value. Bravo, Lisa. And we didn't even get it out completely fluidly. Imagine what happens when it's just like, whoop, right? That's awesome. Mary says, go Lisa. That's my accountability partner. I assume Marie or is your partner? Hi, Marie. Douglas says, what's the cost? And Douglas, my friend, what's the investment? Same thing.
I was going to say investment.
What's your investment? Let me just do the math for you. We guarantee a 10x return, okay? And the guarantee is $50,000. You can do the math. That'll give you the answer. David says, how did you come up with $1,000 per month scope of work? How did you arrive to your quote? Lisa, how do you go through that process?
Oh, well, I used something called Go Proposal. So after having my discovery call with the client, I create a proposal based on what their needs are. So that's just an average. But that's kind of where I've fallen over the last, and then the clients that I've onboarded recently. So it's kind of like my average.
Cool. That's fantastic. Brandon Clark says, go Lisa. Glad to see you doing well.
Hey, Brandon.
Angelina says, sounds like you're getting closer to your dream firm every day. I can't wait to join you. Angelina, we can't wait to have you as well. Kara says, what an awesome journey. Thank you for sharing, Lisa. What's the biggest problem you see on the horizon now? I'm in a similar situation to you.
I will say the last thing that we discussed at my hot seat was just bandwidth. And for me personally, just understanding where I need to look to offload what like that next step for me is, because I personally will start to hit my own personal capacity. So the next step for me is honestly onboarding that accountant, that part-time accountant, to offload that space between the bookkeeper and the advisory work that I do. So that's my next, that's my Q2 goal, Q3, as I onboard more clients.
Perfect. And just to clarify, hot seat, what Lisa referenced, those are 30-minute one-on-one coaching calls directly with me, and where we dive deep into what's going on, where's the focus, where should it be, what are the problems, how do we solve them as efficiently as possible. Again, those are one-on-one directly with me. And then I have it looks like I've got, Andrew says, we share the same niche. Be careful, Andrew. Lisa's coming for your clients. No, I'm kidding, brother. Do you run into?
No, gosh, there's plenty of room. You know, what's really funny is like, that's one of those things, like there are so many clients out there. Yep. I'm in Massachusetts and I'm talking to a guy in Pennsylvania. I just onboarded a guy in Maryland. I have another call with someone who's in Florida. It's opened up. Sadly, COVID has opened up people's eyes that they don't have to work with a professional in their backyard. They can get that specialist. And so while COVID has been very challenging for most people, it really has, for me in that sense, opened up doors, because now people are like, oh, well, she doesn't need to be in my backyard. So
exactly. That was a very common mentality for the contractor space. Not so much anymore, that's for sure. And I was joking, the market size is enormous. Think about how many dedicated marketers, I put that in quotes, but how many marketers there are for accountants out there. There are plenty of opportunities as long as we position ourselves right and we communicate our message well. But his question, excuse me, Andrew, do you run into issues of having huge cleanup projects clients refuse to pay for? How do you deal with it?
So no, I mean, cleanup is something that I addressed right at the beginning, depending on who has been, doing the work up to this point. Sadly, if it's a lot of times, if it's like $1 million construction company, it tends to be the wife. And again, they aren't bookkeepers. They're doing it just to be helpful. And so I address it like, I'm going to have to go in there and probably dig in and clean up. And that's like, your monthly investment is X. It doesn't include your cleanup. And so I kind of set the tone in the discovery call that the monthly investment is this, but there will be things outside of that. We can absolutely adjust the scope, and I have no problem with that. Just be aware that your monthly investment does not include, out of scope, and just really kind of, again, it's just boundaries. And once you create the boundary in that first call, that second call, they're okay with it. Like, I was the one who had the problem with it. It wasn't them, it was me. And so just setting the rails was a huge thing for me too, honestly.
Incredible. And I was grinning from ear to ear. Did you hear the F word there, ladies and gentlemen? Did she use the F word when she was talking about her services? Everyone's like, what's the F word? Fee. She said investment, my monthly investment, not my monthly fee. When was the last time you were happy to pay a fee? Never in your life were you happy to pay a fee. Monthly investment at all times. And I was just so proud to hear that. That's exactly what's up. David says, book my call. Let's do this. That's what's up, David. Joe says, very insightful. Thank you for sharing, Lisa. Call me, Tyler. Joe, no phone tag. I don't play phone tag. I'm sorry. I'd love to have the opportunity to speak with you, but
you got to call Tyler. Maybe book your call.
Got to book your call. It's the only way. It's the only way this works. Kathy says, can I ping you with some questions, Lisa? I feel really lost right now with what to do with my firm. Is that okay, Lisa?
Yeah, I don't have a problem. If you are on Facebook or whatever, you can, shoot me a message. I will say that when I finally decided that I was going to do this, I went back and I dug through my emails to find the last email that you and I had. And I pulled it up and I went to book a call, and it would not let me book a call beyond August 31. And I freaked because I was like, I need to talk to this guy. And I literally took a call with Tyler at 7:00 in the morning because it was the only time I could squeeze into my calendar. And I was like, I got to get on it. Like, I've got to do this. Like, I'm on fire. Like, I'm finally like ready. And I was like, I can't get a call with him. Oh my God. And so I took the call I could. It was like a Friday morning at 7:00. I was still in my workout clothes.
Amazing.
And again, you were surprised, and it was the best thing that I did. I finally feel like I absolutely have direction in what I'm doing. I don't feel like I'm spinning out of control. I've created boundaries with myself, with my clients. I've had a complete rethink of my practice, and it's slowly becoming what I want it to be. So it doesn't happen overnight, and you got to be willing to do it. If you're not, then there is going to be time you're going to have to put into it. I mean, it's like anything else. If you're willing to put that time in, and I say worth every penny, honestly, every day, all day. If you're going to be like me and I used to be, I would get into a program and not finish it, then I wouldn't bother. I mean, let's just be honest. But if you are willing to like take the material and go with it, worth every penny. And I'm so grateful I found you when I did, because I was ready. And I'm excited. I'm excited about seeing my practice grow. I'm excited about, potentially bringing an accountant on and being in that place. So I can't say enough awesome things. And honestly, it was a free CPE. I needed CPE for my license renewal.
That's where it starts, delivering some value on the front end, making sure we build that relationship. And I just want to say thank you so much, Lisa, for being willing to share your story and for all the positive things that you've been willing to create. And again, I always emphasize this. This is on her. This is on our clients. Can we help facilitate it? Can we help shortcut the learning curve? Can we help you implement things faster? Absolutely. But it's Lisa and her willingness to be proactive that allows her to be a dream firm leader. So thank you so much, Lisa. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you everyone for checking it out. Be sure to book your call if you are looking to create your dream firm in record time. Remember, only you can create your dream firm, but we help you every step of the way. Talk to y'all later.